All right, everybody, welcome back. Another K-12 Politics and Tech. Tim Watrous here, joined by Kevin Gordon, President of Capital Advisors. Kevin, glad to have you back.
Good to be back. I'm broadcasting in a different locale this time on the coast.
I know.
Sneak in a couple of days of a break, but these things are important, so good to be with you again.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this on your break, and looks like a nice video location. So congrats on finding a good spot. And Barrett Snyder's also joining us today from Capital Advisors, one of the partners. And Barrett, always glad to chat with you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you, Tim. Kevin, from wherever you are on the coast. I'm in my living room as is normal, so this will be fun.
Support for Capital Advisors. So
yes.
Barrett, we're on staycation, right? Let's call it staycation.
That's right, staycation.
Well, great. And so we got a lot to cover today, and glad to all the folks that have subscribed to this. Again, I'll just say it right at the top of the broadcast. If you enjoy this and you get a lot out of it, please help us spread the word. Like us, share it on Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on. We really appreciate the support, and make sure to subscribe to that YouTube channel. We'll be updated every time we put in a new video. With that, I want to get started with the stimulus that everybody's looking for. There's lots of news. It was red hot for a while, and that's kind of gotten a little quiet, Kevin, and that makes me worried. So can you fill us in on what's going on in DC, and where's the stimulus that everybody's kind of waiting on?
Yeah, it is really frustrating, and we were hoping that the pressure of all of the benefits, the unemployment benefits, and some of these other benefits are so crucial to Americans across the country. Basically shutting down last Friday would create some pressure for them to get this done quicker. What it's doing is it's putting pressure on them to try to find an isolated solution for that and then move on. The minute those things get disconnected, it dims the possibility of us getting a real serious stimulus package over the finish line. So we're not real crazy about those things being disconnected, but we know that Congress is working on this still. The talks are ongoing. Obviously, Republicans and the president are having conversations we never thought they would have in the interest of trying to get something done with Democrats. So, things are moving, but they're just moving slowly. And then one issue that we understand has been introduced that's a big priority to House and Senate Democrats that they've been pushing that has actually slowed it down a little bit is real serious effort to try to insert relief for state and local government workers. They constitute about 17 million workers all across the country. And House Speaker Pelosi really wants there to be a relief package there and is trying to convince both the White House and congressional Republicans in both houses that there is a connectivity ultimately to the economy by helping states out. I think obviously that she's right. It's going to be important to us in public schools across the state because the degree to which we get any kind of a state assistance package, if you will, that benefits the state of California, it reduces the pressure that any money that would come to us on education ends up all going really to solve broader state issues than it does to actually supplement the money that we might get beyond what we've gotten already. I mean, hopefully we end up with a package that has both a state assistance piece as well as a serious education piece, and we'll see. But it has been a little eerily silent, and I think people are getting more frustrated about that, but we'll see. Now, Congress is supposed to go on their summer break starting next week, so their last day of business was going to be today. We'll see what the two houses do with this incredible roster of unfinished business. At the top of that list, obviously, is the fifth round of stimulus that we were hoping to see happen. So I imagine things are going to get delayed until they get this done. I can't imagine them just leaving town with this not finished. But we'll see. I mean, the day's going to scoot by pretty quick.
Well, thanks, Kevin. And yeah, maybe it's time to get Governor Wise back on the broadcast and kind of hear from him what his thoughts are, because it's obviously important for everyone to really understand what might be coming and what it's going to be intended for, what that funding is going to be intended for, which is exactly what you mentioned. And what else has gone quiet is the E-rate news, like $2 billion to $4 billion to get people connected for distance learning. Well, school's already open in some places, or it's about to open. And we don't have that funding from the FCC that everyone needs and we believe is coming. So the timing on this is starting to get a little frustrating. We'll look for more updates from you, and maybe we'll have Governor Wise on to help us clear this up soon. So thanks for that. Yeah, and speaking of budgets, Barrett, the state budget cleanup that's going on back in Sacramento, can you tell us a little bit about that and where we are with the state budget?
Yeah, we are expecting the language on budget cleanup to get released publicly any day now. It's Friday now, probably next week, maybe even over the weekend. We know staff in the legislature and in the administration have been working to hammer out some deals on things. I think the big thing that most folks are watching is what are they going to do about districts that have growing enrollment, given the way they designed the hold harmless going forward, that there are a bunch of districts and charter schools have actually beginning litigation over the issue. Some deal on that we're expecting to hopefully resolve that issue for a lot of folks. It's affecting school districts as well as charter schools, although a lot of the press is focused on charter schools. So we expect that in the language, along with any other cleanup issues. They've got to get this stuff done this month. The legislature is basically around until the end of August. And then we expect them to close down. Revenues continue to be pretty healthy and are exceeding expectations, but we don't expect them to do anything in terms of spending any of that money right now. I think they're going to hold it for a while, see what happens not only with the federal stimulus that Kevin mentioned, but also what happens with the economy. We're sort of early in the year. If there's a downturn later as this pandemic drags on, that could buttress against any further impacts. But if things kind of stay on course, that's very helpful and could help mitigate against having to take additional cuts in the future. You can back off some of the deferrals, for example, and then just kind of redo the deferral that we were already otherwise planning to do. So there gives them more options to hold the money. So I think that's what they're going to do on some of that stuff. So we're not expecting them to spend any of the money right now. I don't know, Kevin, you have other thoughts on that too?
That's such a great point, Barrett, is that, when the budget process was going through a month ago, there was a lot of talk about the potential of an August revise, and Barrett's spot on, is that talk is pretty much dissipated. And again, there is marginally more money for now, but nobody can really tell what happens to the rest of the year. And so there is not going to be this clamor, we think, for an August revise. But one of the things that we do know is that as revenues kick up a little bit, and we want you guys to know what the implications of new revenue would be for education. In addition, there's going to be stuff that's going to happen with regard to the closeout of this legislative year, which literally happens in a matter of weeks. So we're probably going to do something, not like a May revision workshop, but we're definitely going to be doing something coming your way to give you guys a more comprehensive update of both what's going on with the budget and what's going on with a lot of policy issues. So look for that. We'll be talking about that, Tim, probably next week, and a little more definition around what our dates are going to look like.
Well, looking forward to that. And, at the end of the day, it sounds like there is some good news as far as revenues and things go. So, we'll take any slivers of good news in today's environment. So thanks for sharing that, Barrett and Kevin. One thing that's on top of everyone's mind is connecting with folks. Either you're just coming back to school or you're just about to come back to school, and connectivity is really the ultimate problem districts are trying to solve right now. And we saw an announcement come in this week from the state about an announcement with Apple and T-Mobile, and the headline sort of caught me as it was, I guess, let's say I misunderstood the headline because it looked like there was 1 million devices coming to the state of California from the companies with the state involved. Unfortunately, when you read through the fine print, there was a charge for the devices and also the connectivity. And when you look at the cost of that connection, it was rather expensive per student. So as we said on this broadcast in the past, thinking in terms of how much does it cost for me to get one teacher connected, the device and the internet to get them connected. How much does it cost for me to get one student connected with the device and the internet connectivity? And really, when you start to think about that, you come up with a number. How much is it going to cost me for a year to stay connected to people? If you look at this announcement, it was about $600 per person. And that's about 50% more than if you go out and try to do this on a reasonable budget than you would spend otherwise. So for me, it was a bit of a head scratcher to see a big announcement like that come from the state. And if you're a leader and you kind of asked your team to go investigate, they're probably going to bring this big number back to you. And to me, that's a bit of a distraction that is, I would say not super helpful in the environment that we're all in. So if you asked your team to go or you're about to ask them to go investigate, I'll just say, don't invest too much time. Always learn and make your own decision. But that one was a head scratcher for me personally. I like the fact that people are focusing on it, but let's focus people into something that would be extraordinary, something that would be hard to come by. So anything you want to add there, Kevin?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in here because get a little more specific. So it's not a pot of money for you. It is the bizarre endorsement of a very specific vendor for a product offering. And the product offering may or may not be a good deal. And that's really what Tim's getting at. And then they point to the money you're already going to get, some of the federal money, and telling you where you could spend some of that money on this product offering. It's very unusual that the state would get involved with a specific vendor like this when we have lots of choices in school districts. And this gets back to the thing that I've talked about many, many times, and it's why we sort of engage digital advisors to help school districts and give you guys advice, is because trying to figure out, we knew you're going to be approached by all kinds of vendors who are going to want you to spend money, and you've got a lot of money to spend in a very short period of time. We do know that. So there's a lot of mistakes that potentially could be made. And one of them was when the state of California comes to you and says, hey, we got this partnership with Apple and whoever else the other vendors are, and they got this great package for you. That endorsement almost implies that it's a good deal. And what we're basically telling you is really be careful. We're not impressed by it really very much at all. So you need to take a look at that. So the big announcement, like somebody's doing you guys in districts a favor, and we're pretty dubious of what is being represented there. So that's really the caution. Tim, I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I was trying to dance around and tiptoe around that, so I appreciate you being a little more direct. But yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. And speaking of connectivity, there's SB 1130, broadband for all. That's been kind of on the horizon for a while. And what are your thoughts on that as far as like the likelihood of success for this critical initiative?
So Senator Lena Gonzalez has this bill 1130, SB 1130, that now has made it out of the Senate. It is over in the Assembly side. It's moved now over to the Assembly Appropriations Committee, which really is the last stop before you would get a floor vote and down to the governor. It does have a few Democrat no votes on it. And part of the reason why there's some debate about it is what this bill basically does is it redirects some of the money that exists right now, and it's a result of about a 7% tax on our phone bills. And so there's this thing called the California Advanced Service Fund, and you'll see it on your phone bills. And so again, about 7% of tax that goes on it, and it goes for certain sort of priorities currently that are broadband and connectivity oriented. The problem is as Senator Gonzalez sees it, is that it's all focused on pretty antiquated approaches to connectivity. And she wants this money to be redirected so that we're doing fiber and we're doing a lot of more updated stuff. One of the examples is that there's a prohibition in the current fund that you could actually do something to revamp what goes on in terms of connectivity in California communities. For any community that's already serviced by connectivity that has the old DSL, very outdated, old technology. If you've got a community that has that, then you're not going to be in the mix for getting any future funding out of this pot. So they revamped the pot so that it's all oriented toward sustainability of newer technology. And then the other part that's a little disappointing is because, of course, any money bill always gets slowed down when you're doing big expenditures. It doesn't expand the amount of money that's currently made available. So it's under $300 million that's available right now in that fund. It doesn't increase the fund at all, but it has the capacity. Like in 2019, it generated over $400 million. So it is generating money every year. What's really happening is it's redirecting it. We think generally it's a good idea. Again, there are some people out there that are opposed, and I know, Barrett, you've been watching this a little bit too.
It looks like some of the umbrella groups for the internet service providers are opposing it, and I think it's because it's just, to your point, Kevin, it's moving some money around in ways they don't like. So a lot of cities, counties, local governments are for it. The big tech companies, internet service providers are opposing, it looks like.
Well, thanks for that, Barrett, and thanks, Kevin. Barrett, one thing I wanted to follow up with you on independent study.
Yep.
Just there's a lot of talk going on about independent study right now. Can you fill us in on the latest with that?
Yeah, so on the 31st, the department released some new frequently asked questions on their website related to distance learning and what that means. And in these frequently asked questions, they address independent study. And when SB 98 passed, the bill that implemented all the distance learning statutes, we specifically had reached out to the administration and asked about, the applicability of these provisions to independent study programs, because they seemingly were. You could tell distance learning was used, and they used independent study statute language as a model. A lot of it you'll see kind of mirrors, and they said no, they are separate statutes, which is true, and we read it that way. And they don't touch each other; they're different programs, that kind of a thing. The frequently asked questions on the department's website sort of muddy that. And they say specifically that, according to these opinions here, that the distance learning rules, some of the distance learning rules, apply to independent study programs. And that's a head scratcher based upon our read of the statute, what we were told by the administration when it passed, and what we think is sort of common sense. I think, though, when we dig, we understand sort of the goal. They're looking to stop what I think they perceive are districts that will run out and just enroll kids in independent study as a means of getting around the requirement in distance learning that you track daily participation, live interaction with kids and teachers. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's a fear based in reality. Independent study agreements, you can't just enroll kids. Parents have to agree. That there are caps on independent study, so you can't just take all your kids and put them in independent study. But the problem, I think, for a lot of districts right now is going to be, you have a lot of independent study programs, kids that were enrolled in independent study programs prior to COVID hitting, and now these rules about live daily interaction apply to independent study when that's never been the case. And in fact, you use independent study in unique circumstances when you've got kids that are using, doing advanced coursework or something outside of the norm. This will make that very challenging. So what are we doing about it? So the good news is these are just FAQs on the CDE website. We've talked to the department. We're reaching out. The other statewide associations know, CSBA, AXA, SECESA, CASBO. We're all pushing to get this hopefully fixed before it goes in the audit guide, because that's really what's going to matter, is that we make sure that this isn't a big gotcha financially for districts running programs, particularly for the ones that were running programs for kids anyway prior to COVID. But getting that audit guide clarified so that it doesn't hurt. That's what's happening. So that's an ongoing process. They're not, we understand, going to do regulations, but the audit guidance is going to be what's key. So when the auditor shows up at a district and they open the books and they start looking at what you were doing for independent study kids, if they're looking for daily live interaction in a particular way, that could be a problem. So we just want to clarify some things at least. But the stuff that's on the CDE website, it's not statute, it's not regulation, and it's not audit guidance yet. So we have a little bit of an opportunity to clean this up. But it's something that everybody running an independent study program should be aware of. One caveat here is if you are a non-classroom based charter school and you're basically doing everything by independent study rules, you do not specifically have to comply with distance learning requirements. This just applies to school districts, county offices of education, and classroom based charter schools that might be running a program with some kids in independent study. So it's a little bit messy. We're going to try and get it cleaned up here. We're working with the statewide, but everyone should know the timing on the shift of the interpretation is not good for everybody. We totally get that. Here we are at the end. We're trying to open schools, and the rules appear to be shifting under our feet. So we're working on it, but just to make everybody aware of it.
Thanks, Barrett. Yeah, the auditing of all this is going to take a lot of work, and there's going to be, imagine this is going to be debated throughout the year, until things return to somewhat normal. So go ahead, Kevin, please.
I wanted to sneak in on that comment about. So we did have sort of a preliminary planning meeting this week in anticipation of meetings with the state controller, who does control those audit functions. And I'm telling you, it's just really refreshing to see all the major statewide associations with a seat at that table, who are going to really emphasize to the controller and to her team that we need an audit approach to this that's reasonable and makes sense out of what you're going to be asking districts to do, given the fact that we are just in completely uncharted territory. We got a lot of new statute that we're going to be abiding by. There's going to be a lot of potential traps and scenarios that we didn't envision. And we want them to make sure that whatever is decided in that sort of convening that the controller ends up with on what the content of the audit guide will be, that it's stuff that we should reasonably expect districts to do and then be held accountable for that. And we all know the rules going in. And then the stuff that's harder to audit, that's almost impossible to audit, that they'll stray away from trying to, pin school districts down on stuff that simply isn't able to be tracked that way. So we're working on that. I just want people to know there's a meeting, sort of a pre-meeting on that this week, and then we're going to be meeting with the controller next week, a group of us. It's led by CASBO, CSBA, AXA. Some of the statewide associations are really engaged with this. The small school districts associations at the table, and of course the assessor, the county SUPs. So really great group. They're looking out for our collective best interest to make sure that the potential of audits run amok don't happen.
Well, thanks for that, Kevin. And yeah, so I guess this is a good time to bring up, kind of like expectations around technology, right? We're talking about auditing. We're talking about, kind of our new normal, a new reality. And one of the things that we're advising our clients and digital advisors in this really tough time is saying, make sure you're messaging early to your board, to your community, that you are you're putting all XYZ measures in place to establish this connectivity, to reach people, to reach teachers and students, to provide distance learning. But it is important that you let people know that there is room for error in this, and there's a lot of things that we don't know. So when you go turn all the lights on, you're going to find some things that you didn't expect. And so you want to message those things early, because with technology, people have a let's say an expectation of perfection, right? They've seen some investment. They know you put some new things out there. They're going to expect those things to work perfectly at all times. And as we know with technology, there are bumps, there are bruises. And if we message it the right way, it's looked at as, progressing to the successful place that we all want to be. And if it's messaged the wrong way, it can be looked at as a complete failure. So really, I think one of the best things you can do for yourself and your team around technology and this distance learning thing is to message early that you're going to do the very best you can when people come back. And really throughout the year, your position, your connectivity, your ability to to connect with folks, to drive learning is going to improve over time. So if you have that right approach, I believe you're going to make your life a little bit easier, and you're going to manage those expectations of your board and your community, your teachers and students, and you're going to have a more successful approach at this new distance learning reality we're all in. So that's my food for thought for the day on that. And then Barrett, just speaking of reopening, I know CITE has some resources. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, just a plug for the resources. I mean, it's a fairly comprehensive list of COVID-19 related resources. I mean, in CITE is California IT and Education. This is the formerly CETPA, right? So for folks that may not be familiar with the name change recently, but compiled its resources on legal issues, distance learning issues, resources for parents, resources for teachers. It's just a fairly thorough compendium of stuff. So on their website, CITE.org, CITE.org, you go to their COVID-19 resources. Just a plug for it. It's just really good. I keep going there for stuff. So hopefully folks can find that helpful.
Thanks, Barrett. Yeah, we want to thank our friends at CITE for putting that together. And we're actually going to put the link to that in the email that goes out to the Capital Advisors clients, and we'll put it in the description field in the video. So if you clicked on the video, you look below in the description, you'll see the link there. With that, I just want to thank you, Barrett. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us this week and sharing all this wonderful expertise that you have. And, we get a lot of great comments from folks that really appreciate this. I would just ask that if you have any specific questions out there, viewers, please send them our way. We'd be happy to try to dig into some of the topics that you want answers on. And we'd love to continue to serve in this way as long as we're valuable. So want to say thanks again. Thanks, guys, for joining. Any final thoughts, Kevin, you want to wrap up with?
No, I think we got it covered today. We covered a lot of territory.
Good, Barrett. Anything else from you?
Nope, good. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Yeah, great talking to you. We'll talk to you next week.